Please join me in welcoming Ekam Ramesh, Principal at KPMG.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm still soaking from Larry's multimodal AI. I'm still trying to figure out what that is. I'm sure as many of you are coming to Vegas, kids, spouses, partners would have asked you, why are you spending 3 days or 4 days in Vegas? I was on a FaceTime with my niece who lives in India, and she asked me, Uncle, why are you going to Vegas? I said, as a consultant, I have to go learn and understand all things about AI. So she asked me this one question, which all consultants dread, which was, what do consultants really do? So I was like, oh boy. So I said, I'm going to an AI conference. Why don't you ask Gemini on your iPad, and it's going to tell you what consultants do. So as I was getting ready today, she calls me back, and she goes, Uncle, Gemini tells me that consultants, such as your uncle, help solve problems and puzzles for grown-ups and sometimes find the missing pieces. I was like, wow, that's better than what I would have said. And it also validated my career choice to be a consultant. But then she follows up with a killer question. She was like, I still don't understand, why do you have to go to office to play puzzles with grown-ups? As they say with AI, there are still things that you have not thought about. Let's get started, but before that, 2 housekeeping items. Number 1, the KPMG and Citadel team are here, so if anyone wants to get to meet them after the session, please do so. And then Oracle requests feedback, so there will be a QR code that comes up towards the end of the session. Grab your phones and make sure you submit your feedback. All right, let's get started. Today's session is about one such puzzle which we all spend our lives solving. How often have you been on programs where extending deadlines is the only way that you have de-risked your program and your go live? How often do you find change being extremely difficult and leaders are perplexed in terms of what to do with change and how to manage? How often do you actually not even start your programs because you're having a fear of the unknowns, right? We all have been there, right? I'm here on stage to share a story, and an inspiring one, hopefully, for all of you about how Citadel was able to achieve speed to market against severe odds in terms of delivering the program on time, and yet, at the same time, we're able to set up a foundation for the future. It's truly an inspiring story. And to narrate the story and share his experiences, I'm going to welcome on stage someone who embodies vision, leadership, and integrity. Since joining Citadel for the past 5 years, he has not only transformed the finance and accounting operations, but also has helped his team to aim higher, achieve more, and at the same time, as we say at KPMG, deliver results that matter. As a valued client, his partnership and collaboration has truly elevated what we are able to serve Citadel. And as a mentor, he continues to remind me that true success is based on integrity and getting it right. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome onto stage Michael Henry, Chief Accounting Officer at Citadel. Welcome, Michael. Thank you.
So first, let me say thank you to Ekam for those kind words and the strong partnership we have with him. I was thinking I probably need to get you in front of my boss a little bit more so you can let him know everything you just said. Hopefully this is recorded, so maybe I can show him that clip. Maybe even my wife and family. So thank you, Ekam, for all you do for us. So as Ekam mentioned, I'm the Chief Accounting Officer at Citadel, and I'm excited to be here to kind of share our insights, our lessons learned, and our journey as we implemented Oracle last year and went live on January 1st. Our vision was clear. We wanted to build a modern platform that would be a strong foundation for our ambitions to transform the finance function further, as well as set us up for technology advancements in the future, such as AI. We'd been on PeopleSoft for over 20 years. It was end of life. It was on-prem. It had many customizations. And so it was becoming a binding constraint to some of our ambitions, given it was on-prem and some of the constraints with PeopleSoft. So we wanted to look to move to Oracle. So our first decisions that we had to make two decisions. One was what platform to go with. And the other one was who to partner with to help us implement it. So the first one, we went through a process to evaluate the different platforms. We decided on Oracle. One of the main reasons was, we thought it was the industry leader, and that was really important for us in terms of their commitment to the product, the number of clients they have on the platform, so we can benefit from other clients and what is best in industry. And so we decided to select Oracle. The second thing was who to go with. Obviously we're here, we selected KPMG. And so there's a few reasons that we selected KPMG, which I think are helpful for anyone going through this journey. First, I view most of them, KPMG may disagree, I view most of the big four, the implementers, will all have similar people. They recruit from the same schools, they go to the same training, they get certified in Oracle the same way. So we really focused on the people that knew our process the best and our people and our culture. And we'd had a number of projects with KPMG prior to that, so we really felt like they knew us and how we like to operate. The other thing that's really important is we felt like KPMG was very receptive. So you're going to get a large team of people that come on to do the implementation. Some of those people will be very good, they'll fit your culture. Some of them will not, right? And so at Citadel, we were very quick to give feedback when someone didn't kind of have the right fit for our organization and what we thought. We did this very early in the project, and KPMG was very quick to act on it. So they bring in new resources. Therefore, we actually had a really strong team that fit our organization very early in the project that we felt like it could make us successful. If you allow people that don't fit to linger, the project will not be as successful. So that was really important to find the right partner, and so we selected KPMG. So as I mentioned, we've been on PeopleSoft for more than 20 years. It had been customized. We accumulated a lot of unnecessary data in the system. And so when we started this journey, we said, we're not going to lift and shift. We're going to make sure we go through and clean up our data and clean up our processes as part of this. And this is really important, because if you don't do it as part of the original project, it's highly unlikely you're going to go back after you're on the new system and clean up your data and clean up your processes. So this was really important to us. Do not lift and shift. So we went through that. For evaluating our processes, we tried to challenge the current practice, and we tried to look at our processes a little bit different versus in isolation, like, okay, I'm an accounts payable manager, I do this, or a staff accountant, I do that. We really tried to take a broader front to back look at the processes and really think about what's the right way to do this when you connect the dots across the process to make sure we're not inefficient in one silo. So that's how we evaluate the processes. From a data standpoint, we really focused on the data and where the golden source was and making sure we didn't have multiple golden sources, right? In PeopleSoft, we had one system that stored our entities, but then we had PeopleSoft that had our entities plus a few other entities. And so now we have a break versus that. And so we really focused on going upstream, looking where the data's at, and making sure you have the golden source there, put the controls there, and get it right there, and have the perfect lineage coming through. So we were able to implement in a little less than a year. And so what I'll do is I will take you through how we were able to achieve this. So I think we started, and to kick off, we had a offsite in London where we brought the team together. And it was about 40 people that we brought together to go through and start with design decisions. It was a complete disaster. The morning was a disaster. You had, different perspectives from the people that were there. KPMG talking Oracle, details about that people not understanding, different opinions across the Citadel team. What's the right way to make a decision? It was bad. You can see this. How many segments do we need? What segments? FX, what ledgers? accounting hub, consolidations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things were coming at the team. I don't think we made one decision in that entire morning. So what we did is we spent the afternoon actually saying, let's focus on how to make a decision versus actually making decisions. And so we came up with guiding principles that allowed us to bump every decision up against going forward to make a quick decision. So we'd say, here's our guiding principles, here's the decision needs to be made, bump it up against these. What's the outcome we get? Okay, that's our decision. And so this was really foundational for us and a turning point for us to allow us to make decisions quickly. We have our guiding principles up on here, so you can see those, and happy to talk to people afterwards about those. Every organization will have their own set of guiding principles based on your organization, your culture, what's important to you. These were ours, and as I said, it really allowed us to make quick decisions. And by the way, let me be clear, all the decisions we made were not right. We made mistakes, right? Even with this process, we made mistakes, but I think the key was we made quick decisions, so then we were able to configure them, test them, and fail fast. And I think failing fast is really important, and was one of the reasons we were successful, is we didn't spend all the time on like making a decision like months and months. It was like quick decision, get in the system, get it tested, does it work, yes or no, fail fast. And so don't be scared to fail, and try to do it as quickly as you can. Obviously, if you fail late, it's much more impactful. So in addition to establishing the guiding principles, change is very difficult. As I started with, we were on PeopleSoft, it was customized. I mean, you could see our team knew every account number, they could just type it in, the legal entity number, they knew everything, exactly how PeopleSoft worked. So not only were we moving from PeopleSoft to Oracle, we were also rationalizing and cleaning the data, changing it. We were changing the processes. So there was a lot of change that was going on in order for us to move to get to Oracle the way we wanted to. As you can see on the slide, it wasn't easy for us. So we started, September 2024 was actually after our first UAT. And what we did is, a good idea for everyone in the audience, we would periodically send out quick surveys to the team just to get a pulse on how the project was going. So these are real numbers. This came right out of our system, counted from this. We were at a 30% confidence level after our first real UAT in September. And so it was really difficult. We ultimately got there from September and went live on January 1st. So let me take you through kind of lessons we learned on how to improve the confidence score. First lesson learned was have your team into the tool as quickly as possible. So when we had that meeting in London, people actually had their laptops. They were looking at Oracle on their laptops with dummy data in the system. That was kind of useful. They could at least see Oracle. But what we did very quickly was we actually converted the PeopleSoft data as it was into Oracle, so our users could actually go into Oracle and see their own account numbers, their own entities, and they could get comfortable with Oracle with the old data. In parallel, we were still going through and cleaning the data, changing the data, but we kind of did baby steps, which was allow people to see Oracle with dummy data. Then we actually had them see Oracle with old PeopleSoft data, and then ultimately, which is where the 30% was at, was when people really got to see the new data and the new system. But it was really important to get the feedback along the way for people to have their hands on the system and go through what Oracle looked like and be able to see their data and then ultimately the final data. The second lesson that we have here is really driving process ownership. So my colleague in London casually said to me one day, he said, hey, Michael, I went through, his name's Steve, I had a meeting with the APAC team. I met with each person on the team, and I had them walk me through how their process is going to change with Oracle. So, and he said it casually like nothing. I said, Steve, that's brilliant, right? That is, and I use brilliant because he's in London, so I made sure I used the brilliant, but he always says. So I was like, Steve, that's brilliant. And so, what I did was I replicated that in the US, and I set up, it was probably close to 40 meetings with people on the team where they actually had to sit down, say, here's my current process, here's the future process, how I'm going to do it in Oracle, and even show me in Oracle, like with the clicks and the screens and things like this. And so that really drove the process down to the team and made sure they were thinking about how their process is going to change once they go into Oracle. So that was huge. Steve, that's, he's not here, but the team can let him know I was bragging about him. But that was a great idea from him. The last thing I'll say for lesson learned is PMO rigor. As it changes really hard. We were at 30% confidence in September. It would have been very easy to be like, no chance 1-1, let's just kick it out to second quarter, right? It would have been very easy to do that. We never gave in as an organization to that date. And I think that was really important. Once you move the date, even if things start to go well, you're never going to move it back, right? Once you move it, it goes one way and one way only. So even think about it, September, we didn't move 1-1. And we were working through fixing the stuff we identified in September up through November, and we still just wouldn't come off with a 1-1 date. And so I think it's really important to stick to the date and hold it as long as you can, because it forces the organization to get through those issues. The other thing I'll say about PMO rigor is you get a lot of high-level comments. In the survey that we had, people would say, it's not going well, right? We're never going to be able to hit the date. My process doesn't work. Like things like this that are not actionable. And so we really spend a lot of time going to the person saying, okay, like tell me precisely what it is. Double click, double click, double click. To when we actually got to a real issue that then we could create an action plan against and go get that done. And then we got a real action plan out of that, but you'll hear a lot of noise that's high level. And oftentimes that noise, when you double clicked and got to the real issue, it wasn't actually that big of an issue, right? Sometimes it was just like, change their permissions so they can actually have access to a different module that allows them to do their work in this module. But the feedback from the team was often very high level. This just doesn't work, right? And so I think it was really important for us to double click and get down to the real issue and develop action plans against that. So as I mentioned, outcomes delivered is part of this. We think we have a much stronger foundation now. We have cleaner data. As I mentioned, better data lineage. Our processes are improved and really thought about more from a front to back standpoint. We're industry standard. And this allows us to get to the what's next. And so what we're doing now that we're on this is we're really trying to get to a place, as I mentioned earlier, where we can see perfect lineage of the data back to the golden source. It's only stored once, and we have the controls there. And once you do that, you kind of keep those controls that's passed or didn't pass with the data all the way through to the ledger, right? So you know when I'm looking at something in my account here, that it's actually correct because I can actually see the attributes that can tell me that it's actually passed all the controls at the golden source, and the amount is the same all the way through the steps through the different systems. And so that's our goal, is really thinking about straight through processing. One other thing that we thought about with this, to give an example, oftentimes we catch things at the deliverable level. And what do I mean by that is we have a lot of entities, and those entities have a lot of deliverables, financial reports, regulatory reports that come off the back. If we have one piece of data upstream, like a classification, somehow Bloomberg says a US bond is really an emerging market bond. If we let that come through, that's stored once upstream. If we let that come through, now that bond is traded in multiple entities. All those entities have multiple reports. Now when you catch it at the deliverable level, you have 15, 20 places you're catching that one issue that's hitting all those and have to make adjustments all the way at the end. And so we're really trying to catch that issue at the golden source, fix it once, make sure it comes all the way through and all your deliverables are correct. So really think about how do we move our controls from deliverable to golden source, and that's how we're thinking about the straight through. Also, once you have that really strong data lineage, it allows you to quickly implement new technologies, including AI. If you have bad data that doesn't connect, you can't, or at least maybe AI's, Eckham's, niece may know, maybe it's able to do it, but you can't implement AI on bad data. And so we think that spending time really getting our data right as AI matures for finance is going to allow us to quickly adopt it once we get to a good place with it. So key takeaways in summary, it's hard. Stay the course, really try to push the ownership down to the team. As I said, we did individual meetings. I think that was really effective. Thank you, Steve. And have the bottoms-up ownership of the project. Don't lift and shift. This is your chance to do it, right? Go in there and clean the data. We have cases where we eliminated 60% of projects, 50% of cost centers, like big things that we changed as part of the data conversion. Go in there and clean up the data when you do your implementation. And the last thing I'll say is set up your guiding principles. Don't be scared to fail fast, right? To almost encourage it with the team, fail fast, you make a decision quickly, go test it and see how it works. So I'll end with a big thank you to KPMG. Thank you for being great partners to us, as well as Oracle and the team, right? We couldn't have done it without all three of us really working well together. So very good success story.
All right. Yeah. So now I'm on the 6th floor with Gerald, so we can definitely make that easy. So. Thank you. I still remember vividly when we started the program where, one day in your office you called me and you said, like, the key to success at Citadel is learning and make sure the team embraces that culture. So thank you, Michael, for this and sharing this learning with everybody here. Next up, we are going to move to fireside chat, and it's going to be a panel discussion. And I'm going to invite 3 luminaries for this. The first one that is going to get on stage, along with the rest when we get everyone on, is going to be Jennifer Chilton. For those that don't know Jennifer leads our Oracle practice in the US. Jennifer embodies, in my opinion, compassion, courage, and confidence. And I'm proud to have partnered with her to deliver this success for Citadel. Next is a good friend and a fellow Bills fan from Orchard Park, New York. He did grow up with the Mafia. And also the global controller at Citadel, Chris Winter. I'm saving the best for the last, a charismatic straight shooter who is as passionate about data governance and controls as she is about a cup of Blue Bottle coffee. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Jennifer, Chris, and Cheryl. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Ekam. I think we're all going to hire Ekam to introduce us everywhere we go from now on. Hi, I'm Jennifer Chilton, and going to talk to you about the program today, and I'm really thrilled to have up here with me, Chris and Cheryl, who lived and breathed the program, and are going to talk openly about it. You heard from Michael about the success, the significant transformation that happened at scale at a very, very fast pace. But as you also heard, it was not all smooth sailing. And like any of these global complex projects, there are complications and challenges that we faced. And so we really wanted to bring them up and talk through them with the group, so hopefully to provide insights into each of you in your various stages of the Oracle journey. Chris and Cheryl, who would have thought a year ago that we'd be up here today? So let me turn it over to Chris and Cheryl to do a brief intro.
Hey everyone, so just very briefly, Chris Winter, as Ekam said, I'm Global Controller here at Citadel, so cover corporate accounting as well as the AP side of the house. I've been here for a little bit under 2 years now. It's been an amazing experience, and prior to joining the team, I was a partner at PwC.
Hi everyone, Cheryl Timko. I started my career in public accounting, KPMG actually, and I've now been at Citadel for 13 years in a variety of roles across our finance organization, primarily covering risks and controls, but now also overseeing our compensation and partnership accounting function. Thanks for having us.
So we're going to dive right in. We're going to start with the lowest of lows. So taking back, going back to the testing event that was, kind of referred to earlier. As many people out there heard, it went poorly. You both are probably thinking poorly is an understatement. And so we saw the graphic earlier, right? The 30% confidence rating at that stage in the project. And at that point, things have been going pretty smoothly. We had been hitting all our milestones. So to have that rating was a bit of an unexpected kind of outcome. Chris, why don't you go into a little bit more detail on what were some of the drivers of that concern and some of the feedback that we got?
Sure. So I think the first thing that I noticed today when Michael was going through his presentation was our first meeting was in London, and then maybe our low point in September was in London. So just don't have any implementation meetings in London, and maybe you'll be fine. No, so I think the 30% is just a startling number, and I think as a leadership team, we knew we had 90 days to go before implementation and go live, and to know that that's the confidence level that your team and your people have in you is alarming. Change is hard, as you've heard multiple times today. 20 years in PeopleSoft, a lot of very experienced team members who, maybe to be direct, were set in their ways and how we wanted to do stuff, and it reflected itself in the 30%. So what did we do? I think the two things that Michael hit on, which we really drove at, was the process ownership and then the project management element of it. So I think it was invaluable sitting down with all 125, 140 people across the organization to really go into how is this going to impact, your day-to-day, and not just the high-level snippets, but really continuing to double-click and drive down to identify, okay, what are really those big rocks? What are those blockers for go live? Versus what's something that's a nice to have that maybe we can build an eloquent solution around and we'll tackle it day two. So I think that was super important. And also because I think underlying all of this was there was starting to be a little bit of a notion that everyone knew this was an aggressive goal, but this was leadership's goal and we don't have a voice. And people, management's not listening to us. So I think a big part of this too was to help people feel empowered that, listen, we're in this together, one team, and we're really driving towards how is this impacting your process, and then how do we ultimately get there with the prioritization with the PMO at the end of the day.
Yeah. The other thing I'd add related to the 30% rating was, frankly, a number of teams just were unable to complete the testing that they set out to do in our first UAT. Going into this, our roadmap called for 2 full parallel runs, and because of the way we had set this up and structured it, some of the downstream teams in our finance department were unable to do the testing that they needed to do to get comfortable, clearly, with that January 1 go live date at that time.
And maybe digging into that a little bit more, the data side. So as you mentioned, I know this was a strong, kind of aspiration of Citadel to do 2 full parallel cycles. Parallel meaning full-blown expense transaction data flowing, kind of all the way through. Maybe talk in a little bit more detail around why that was challenging.
Yeah. And like I said, we had really 2 runs at this, right? One planned for September, and then one planned for November, December. And some of our decisions at that point in time that we realized, just the data that we were trying to test to get a full parallel run of all of our closes front to back was just too broad. It was very difficult to stage that data, and it created a lot of dependencies between teams in our processes, which, as I said, really left the teams unable to do their testing. We realized then that we needed to be very strategic about the scope of what we were going to test and how we were going to get comfortable with that scope to make a decision that we could go live in 3 months sitting there in September.
Yeah, and maybe just to add on that, I think when you all consider and think about how you want to do a parallel, there's got to be an element of being real about how you're going to execute it as well. So to give an example, on my AP team, we do about 5,000 invoices a month. There's 8 people on the team. So the ability for us to actually do a full production run of 5,000 invoices in a month, as well as
and a day job,
and then the testing of 5,000 just realistically wasn't going to happen. But what we learned and what we did was we really adopted this mindset of military precision and being very deliberate in terms of how we then thought about every single piece of data, how it interacts, what you're staging, not just in the Oracle environment, but also thinking upstream as well. So if you have a source-to-pay tool that's not in your current ERP, right? How does that interact and flow data downstream? And starting to get really, really, really deliberate in terms of all those decisions that we made along the way.
So maybe, we talked about, kind of that low point and some of the drivers for it, and you touched on a few of these topics, but how did the collective, Citadel, KPMG, even Oracle team, how did everyone come together to really turn it around and get up to the 85% that we, kind of saw 2 months later?
Yeah, so I think we knew this going in, but we're not experts in Oracle. I mean, we evaluated all the platforms like Michael said, but realizing we really aren't, and we had 90 days left to get there, and we really needed to lean on our implementation partners to make sure that we got there. And so how did we do that? The project management, to come back to that again, was huge. Cheryl's going to touch on it a little bit more in terms of how we structured it, but looking across work streams, both vertical and horizontal, and then the rigor around daily meetings, right? We knew we had 90 days left, and it wasn't good enough to have 48-hour turnaround. So we had daily meetings, some of them painful from time to time, honestly, but daily meetings, exactly, daily meetings to make sure everyone was held accountable and that we continue to push the ball forward on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I'll say we really did align ourselves with the KPMG team and internally in sort of a matrix of responsibility. So thinking about all of our work streams across finance and accounting, every team, having them really be a part of that ownership. And then the other kind of cross-section of it being the different modules that we were implementing across Oracle and aligning to the KPMG team in terms of that. Sort of dispersing that ownership across the team really shifted the narrative from this is a leadership decision and a top-down item to, as Michael said, really driving it through the whole team. How do we become, not victims of this change, but part of the solution to drive this to success?
And I will say, I've been doing these implementations pretty much for my entire career, and this was, one of the biggest lessons, like one of the biggest learnings and takeaway I had was to really see that shift in accountability literally overnight, kind of after those discussions happened, and after that shifted from the project team kind of pushing this out to each business owner, each leader was accountable for their own success. And so that's definitely, kind of a model I will be taking forward, kind of forever. So then we heard about the foundations for success, kind of earlier. And Cheryl, I know kind of near and dear to your heart is, data governance. Talk us through kind of how that was so critical both to the implementation, but also to kind of the future for Citadel.
Yeah, Michael spent some time on this, but we knew that getting the data right was the foundation of all of this. And so, to be honest, our prior process and our prior system didn't have a whole lot of structure and governance around it. And so coming into this big shift, we realized we needed to strike a balance between governance and structure, but agility, and something that felt like Citadel. We move fast. It's a very dynamic, fast-paced environment. We needed our processes to reflect that. We spent some time with different clients of KPMG and others getting an understanding of what processes they had implemented around their data and their governance, and really trying to feel out what was the right balance for us to have that we would be able to take forward and really operationalize within our environment. And we started doing those processes very early on. We wanted the team to get used to those processes. We wanted to see them in action as we were going through the testing, and I think that that's a big part of what's laid this foundation for us to move forward and get more benefits beyond implementation.
Yeah, and maybe just to add on to that a little bit, I think don't underestimate the effort that goes into getting the data right, cleaning the data, and then making sure it's maintained the right way going forward. I think reflecting after we went live and we got there, I think one of the struggles or the things that we've been working on the last few months was, okay, what are our run books? How do you close a cost center? How do you do this? How do you set up a new legal entity? So not just getting it right and knowing what the process is, but have it documented, right? Know who's gonna own everything. Where are those handoffs between your managed service team or your in-house team and the business owner? So it was a huge effort, but also just think about the governance and how you're going to control it after the fact, and make sure you have all that documented too. It will be super helpful.
So, maybe looking forward, as you look forward now that you have that foundation in place, what excites you most about, what comes next?
I could say we're already seeing automation on the back of having the lineage that Michael talked about and the structure of the data. As an example, we're working through automating a number of our reconciliations between Oracle, the GL, and the various subledgers, either Oracle or external tools, all based on that lineage of data that we've created. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to free up our people to think about higher value things than tick and tie and really spend time in that sort of nature of work.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I mean, it's been great this week seeing what Oracle's doing with the platform and the future of it, and I think some of the releases that are coming out or will come out next year, just in terms of some of the bots or agents in terms of how we can interact with them to do simple tasks and navigating the platform are great. But what I think I'm really excited for is really that next generation of the AI where we're gonna have a bot embedded into the workflow to do fixed asset transfers, where I can just say, hey, move these 30 assets from this book and this ledger to this book and this ledger, and it's another person to run your process. So I think there's some amazing stuff, but I'm really looking forward to almost the next generation of it and what that's going to allow us to do and free us up to do.
So maybe, kind of speaking out to the audience, what advice would you give them at their, kind of various stages of the journey on your key takeaways from the implementation?
Yeah, I'll start maybe. I think for me, it's that idea of dispersing the ownership early. That was a lesson we learned, really making sure that the entirety of the team and the organization feels skin in the game and shifts that narrative from they up there to we needing to accomplish that. For me, I think when Michael and Steve mentioned sitting down with every team member and saying, show me what you're doing to make this a success. Show me how you are going to use the tool every day from here on and how we're going to get there. That for me, I think, was when I knew we may make it across the finish line.
Chris, when did you have that moment of knowing we would cross the finish
I
line?
knew we made it January 6th when we could actually pay people. So that's when I knew we made it. I think my biggest takeaway is it's a roller coaster. You're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, but from a leadership standpoint, don't ride that roller coaster. As anxious as we might have felt from time to time as leaders, just think about how your team feels in that process, and just be steady and consistent throughout it. And look at how many people are here. Like, a lot of people have gone through this change, and you're going to get through it. Just be incredibly disciplined in terms of how you approach it. I think failing fast, as we heard a little bit ago, is incredible advice and needed. And just know that there's great resources out there to help you along, and you'll be successful.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris, Cheryl, Michael, Ekam. Thanks for the partnership. Really appreciate it. And thanks, everyone. We'll stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any questions. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.